Hello, friends. Welcome to People Are Interesting, an audio journal hosted by me, Jan K, as a record of people who inspired me and of topics that I found intriguing over time. Enjoy and thank you for joining the club.
The weather was really good, so I took a couple of cycling trips, and one of them was on Friday, 7th of April, So I took a train to Cambridge. I woke up quite early. The weather was amazing. You know, this kind of a day when it's already really sunny in the morning to the point where the air becomes a little bit kind of like white because of the sun reflection and maybe like vapor or something like that in the air. So it's just this like kind of like juicy sunny day. So I took a train to Cambridge, had a little cycle around Cambridge, and it's nice. It looks like it is kind of academic / research city. That's how it felt to me, at least. There are those new buildings, lab-looking like facilities, kind of sprinkled around town. The city center, there's a lot of green, and the buildings look very nice and quite pristine. And I decided to take a national cycling route number 1, and I cycled until Newmarket, I think that's the name of the place, which is about 15 miles. First you cycle down along the river, which is very pleasant, and then you go through those small little towns and villages and parishes. A lot of like very nice old churches along the way, and the nature was kind of just waking up from spring, so all the bushes were already leafy, but the bigger trees not quite there yet, but a lot of flowers and and just everything kind of looking fresh and really ready for good weather for the season. And one thing that always strikes me when I leave London, and that's not to say that people in London aren't friendly, but it's probably just too many of us here, but it's that people outside in the countryside are just so friendly. They always say hello, like you're just cycling by and a lady walking past you will be like hello, and it's such a like nice inconsequential interaction that is very pleasant, and I think kind of like missed when you live in a big city. So that was amazing. Always, yeah, people are generally speaking very friendly in the countryside. I really appreciate that. So it's interesting also when you cycle through the UK. I think what I have noticed is that one town or village will be really cute and really nice and kind of rather affluent, I would say, but you can go 2 little villages further and it's not as nice anymore. Like there are those differences, and even within Cambridge, parts of Cambridge were really, really nice and looking very affluent, and parts of it didn't look as nice. And it's kind of like different shops, just different vibe, like no expensive coffee anymore, things like that. So I'm always very curious about those socioeconomic differences when I just cycle past, because I feel like if you're cycling, you're moving through the environment fast enough to see it change, but it's not fast. It's not too fast, so you can actually observe the detail. I think that's what I really like about cycling. And I think with walking, it would be a bit too boring for me. Like the changes would be coming too slowly. And it's the same with landscape. Like it's like on a bike, it just changes just fast enough, I think, to keep you engaged with what is going on. So you will be like, you can enjoy a field for a few minutes, but then you take a turn and there's something new, like a little church and a couple of trees, and then you'll like look at that for a couple of minutes and you take another turn and there's something else. and I think that's really good about cycling. So I did maybe 60 kilometers on that day. What did I have? There's some good food in Cambridge, so by the time I got back, I had some nice food, and I really enjoyed that. And I had like a slice of cake in the Newmarket. I didn't feel like Newmarket was a place worth like staying for very long, so I just had a quick look around, and while it looks okay, I maybe I missed like the nice parts of it. I felt it's just like a very normal town in the countryside. That's how it felt. And then yesterday I hopped on a train to Canterbury. I think that's what it's called, the big cathedral city. And it's really nice because it has this medieval vibe about it. The streets are quite narrow, and there's quite a few of those white and wooden houses from like Tudor era or whenever they built them. So you don't have that many of them in London anymore because of the Great Fire in the 17th century. I think that's the reason, mainly. But maybe in the countryside, because there was no Great Fire of London in the countryside, maybe they just stayed there. And I feel like they're quite well preserved, so it really felt like a bit medieval to just be there. And there are the churches, there's the cathedral, which is quite monumental. Although I wouldn't say it's like the biggest cathedral I have ever seen, but it is, or like even close to the biggest church I have seen, but it is quite significant. It's interesting that they've built such a big cathedral in Canterbury. Well, like I wonder what was the decision. But anyway, it was a good vibe. You can get some good food on a nice sunny day. It's fun, I think, to stroll around the city center for a bit. And then I kind of moved out of the city, cycled towards Whitstable. I think that's the name of the city. That's how you pronounce it, which is on the coast. It's like 7 or 8 miles from Canterbury. So it's a nice, like a little bit hilly trail to get there. And Whitstable, I felt like it's this kind of slightly industrial fishing town. So like they had like a cement plant in like the harbor, which was kind of like a tourist spot at the same time. And like I felt like it was a little bit like, I don't feel like it was necessarily ever a tourist spot properly. I think it's like maybe they're trying to maybe make it a little bit more of a tourist spot, because there was quite a lot of people just strolling and having ice cream and everything. But it had more of a vibe of a fishing town rather than a seaside resort. That was my feeling of it. So it was interesting to see it, and I enjoy it, but I wouldn't probably recommend it to myself to go for a weekend there. I don't think it would be worth it. But that's another thing which I love about cycling, is that you move through places and in a kind of non-committed way. So if something is, let's say, great, you can stay there for a bit and have a look around as long as you want. But if something isn't really appealing to you, well, no problem. You're just you keep moving forward, and it's all good. So I think it's good, because previously I was thinking about going for a whole weekend to Whitstable, and I think if I had done it, I would be disappointed, because it would be like pretty big commitment, like getting a place there for a week for a night, and it would be like a way more kind of like expensive. Whereas I feel like that what it had to offer was perfect for 30 minutes, just cycling through it on a sunny day, like kind of like checked. We've been here, I know what it is about. And then what I think is actually the nicest part of like that, I think it's called the Saxon Coast or whatever, or like the Saxon route. That's what I took, which was cycling. I don't remember the name, the number of the route. I want to say it was like 57 maybe or something. And there is a long kind of promenade along the coast for many kilometers that you can take, and you're just cycling along the coast. There's this another fishing kind of town called Herne Hill, and I think it's a bit nicer. It has a bit of a better vibe than Whitstable, in my opinion. And it has like a bit more like a Brighton maybe vibe about it, I would say. So I did that and keep cycling towards Margate from there. So it took me maybe about another hour to reach Margate. So initially I was thinking about just making a loop back to Canterbury, but then I was like, I'm gonna check out Margate. I heard a lot of things about Margate, like kind of apparently like edgy people from East London like to live in Margate, or like to go to Margate. And I definitely noticed that people, let's say in Whitstable and Herne Bay, I think that's what it's called, not Herne Hill. Herne Hill is a place in West London. So in Herne Bay, they were kind of like more like your mom and dad people, whereas like the closer you get to Margate, the more like edgy people started to look, which I thought was pretty cool. But and the cycle to Margate was amazing. I think the most tremendous thing about it was this old church on the coast, on the hill, kind of cliff, on the cliff, and it looked really ancient, really old, and it made me think of those like Viking plunders from, I don't know, whenever, like 12th or 11th century, when they were plundering the monasteries on the coast, coming from Denmark or coming from Norway or wherever the heck they were coming from. So it looked very old. It was just a facade and some ruins around it, so it looked really good and like a bit mysterious. So I really enjoyed it, and you could see it from kilometers and kilometers and kilometers because it's really flat there. And it was really sunny and pleasant and quite windy. First town of the year for sure. So I reached Margate. I think what is really cool about those seaside resorts in England are those arcades, like so packed with people. Till this day there's so many people using them, like kind of like game rooms. I don't know how to describe it. Arcade probably is the term actually. And I think that's kind of like a interesting vibe, because I thought those were gone for good, but no, they're actually doing quite well on the English coast. So that was fun to see. And again, once I reached Margate, I don't know, probably just my expectations were wrong, because I thought it would be like this kind of like hipsterish mecca with beautiful buildings and like just insane vibe, and I felt like people looked cool and it felt like a bit of a vibe, but I feel like the city itself or town itself wasn't that different to the other towns that I passed by. And the problem with this coast, in my opinion, a little bit, was that it's not a sandy beach, it's more like stony beach. So it's a bit of a harder sell, in my opinion, to go for like a holiday, because the beach, and it gets quite deep quite quickly. So I think it's more like a hiking destination. You can kind of see that all those towns, I think that's like kind of a difference between, for example, like destinations in Southern Europe, is that like they kind of stayed the way they were always. They haven't changed that much, whereas a lot of places in Europe, I think there's been such an influx of tourists that you have those big hotels, a lot of concrete sometimes, and it can look really ugly. Whereas here, as I was saying, it kind of still maintains this fishing town vibe about it. And I would imagine that, fishing towns were not like the most affluent and like the coolest and the most hip looking places historically. But that's kind of like, that's what they were, and that's kind of what they are now. So I don't think like they're trying to be anything else. So in that way, I think that was interesting, and I like the fact that I was able to engage with just this environment on a very sunny day. And I'm definitely going to be traveling more on a bike. I think I need to buy a tent. The tent I have now isn't good enough. So I need a tent, I need to service my bike. I think next time I'm going to York. What else have I done this week? A couple of stand-up spots, as always. Oh yeah, I just plowed through this set while in like silence. That was a bit rough on Wednesday. I mean, it wasn't rough for me, but it was just interesting to see that the jokes like didn't really work. And I'm not saying that my jokes are like the best, but usually they work a bit better. But like a lot of guys who were doing spots on that night had a bit of a quiet one. But a couple of people killed, so I can't say that it was the audience. Not at all. I had a very good set on Monday, actually. So it kind of all balances out, to be fair. And what else? A couple of boxing sessions, a couple of Muay Thai sessions. I finally went to a jiu-jitsu class because I had something with my neck. So I really enjoyed that, and I just hope to be able to go to more classes unmolested by injuries, because it is a pretty contact sport, I would say. So what do I have for plan for next week? So it's already Monday, so tomorrow I'm going to go boxing in the morning, do a yoga class, and then head to work. After work, probably comedy club, and then it's already gonna be Wednesday. Spanish classes, yeah. Well, let's see how it goes. Maybe next week I'm gonna go on cycling trip again, actually. I'm kind of in a groove for exploring. I really enjoyed it, so I might do that.